Finding ways to be financially savvy is a smart move. And knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want, like that dream home or new ride, is a great feeling. That's why the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you save when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Oh, no.
Tash, I saw this film last night and it was about like oyster and scallop farmers in North Wales.
Oh, wow. I had really bad food poisoning from oysters once.
Okay, hopefully not from North Wales.
You're listening to The Logbooks.
These are the stories of our lives.
We are Tash Walker
and Adam Zmith.
We're telling tales about history, politics, art, and LGBTQ plus life.
Tash, what's the story today?
Well, Adam, we are relaunching the Logbooks again.
That's a big story. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. We're coming back into your ears weekly. We love chatting. We're two chatty little guys and we love reflecting. So we thought what better to do than to bring the Logbooks back as a weekly, open, reflective conversation.
Yeah. So this is a space where we're going to bring LGBTQ plus life, but also broader than that, like politics, art, culture, history, no doubt. We're just going to bring these things into the studio and talk about it with each other because that's the kind of fun that we like to have, I guess.
Yeah, totally. And let's face it, queer history is gossip.
Yes.
Queer life is gossiping. So that's what we want to do.
It's kind of going to be a gossipy podcast, maybe.
Totally. And, you know, just to remind you, we made the Logbooks podcast. There were 3 seasons. That was the original version of the podcast. So go back and listen to it if you haven't already. After that, we reopened the feed for season 4, which were interviews that we did for the Logbooks book. And we've just finished releasing those. And so here we are, season 5. It's going to be a really new mixed bag of things.
Yeah, we're going to have interviews with people that are doing amazing things in some episodes and visits to places that we get to go to. And also sometimes there's just going to be episodes of us chatting like this one. And I think one of our guiding principles that we said was, does this thing that we're talking about or this thing that we're covering, does it help us to build a world that we want to live in?
Yeah,
and
totally.
that is going to be a guiding principle for us.
Yeah.
And do you remember one of our other guiding principles, Tash?
It was just to have a hangout and have a nice time.
Have fun.
A little bit of a socializing. When you work with someone a lot, especially with the book and the tour, it's tiring and often you don't get the chance to just have a good time, which means that some of these episodes will just sound like movement, and that's because Adam and I will be dancing, which we love.
So we have to really fully move into video podcast finally. Anyway, before we get into our messy middle of the episode, shall we have a little ad break?
Finding ways to be financially savvy is a smart move. And knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want, like that dream home or new ride, is a great feeling. That's why the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you save when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
So you've probably heard by now that we've written a book.
Yes.
It's called The Logbooks, and we're really proud to have it out there in the world. But one of the things that's been happening over the last couple of months is that we've taken the book on tour. We've done over 20 events all across the UK, and it's been amazing. It's been a rollercoaster ride and a whirlwind. But I think we've had a lot of experiences as well, haven't we, as part of that tour?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and that's, I guess, the first thing that we're bringing to what we're calling like the messy middle of the Logbooks podcast now is to really get into the mess of the Logbooks tour. Not that it was like rock and roll and we were throwing TVs out of windows and stuff.
I mean, you were only messy one night, I would say.
Blame Alan Carrage in Sheffield for that. But yeah, it was really quite invigorating, exhausting, energizing, life-affirming, and lots of trains, which I find trains to be all of the above. actually.
You also can sleep anywhere, Adam, which is a wild experience to witness.
I'm asleep right now.
And I really struggle with sleep. So I don't know, we sort of level each other out maybe. But yeah, no, we literally did go everywhere throughout the UK. It was amazing. And it was so cool. Like, shout out to all the little indie bookshops, queer bookshops, which hosted us, all of the community organisations that supported us, and everyone who came to a book event. We are going to be doing more, but not so many in such an intense period of time.
Yeah.
But one of the things I really loved about it was getting to meet people who had listened to the podcast or who were interested in the book and hearing them give us their reflections, which I don't know, I wasn't necessarily expecting so many people to have listened to the podcast.
Yeah, there were a lot of OG podcast fans.
Yeah.
Like, there was
Thank you, listeners.
Yes, there was a person who was like, I listened to the podcast when I was walking through the park regularly on my way to the fertility clinic in 2021, I think it was. And now I have a baby.
Yeah, that was amazing.
That was really cool.
Like, we've got a logbook's baby.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this person didn't name the baby the logbooks, which I found to be quite disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It says a lot.
Or not even podcast. You could call a baby podcast. So that was one person who remembered listening to the podcast. And then there would be like these people that would come up to us after, you know, we would like do the book event. We would like be introduced by the bookshop or whoever. Then we would talk with each other or with a chair if they had a chair, and talk about what's in the book, and we would read from the book, and then we would do questions and answers with the audience, and then people would like be mingling around afterwards and bringing their book up to us to get us to sign it and devalue it for them. And then occasionally, like, one of those people would just be like, yeah, I used to listen to the podcast like 5 years ago, and it was really great, and thank you very much. And we were like, wow, like, here's a face and a voice that we didn't know existed but was out there listening. So that was really nice.
It was really lovely. Yeah, it was really lovely. And then people also shared with us, some of the people who had actually read the book already, the speed readers out there, shared with us what it had made them reflect on. And those were really moving moments too. I don't think I was expecting anyone to have read the book on the book tour, and to hear someone say, I'd never really thought about what it had been like for me growing up under Section 28. It's given me a whole reframing around my childhood experience, my adolescence, was really important to us, I think. And part of what we wanted to do with the book was to help create a community and bring together something which things like Section 28 divided, that piece of legislation that we grew up under in Thatcher's government. And it did feel very, it did feel like we were building a community through the talks, listening to people's reflections, but also hearing the intergenerational conversations that were happening as part of the Q&A. One of the things I remembered, which I really loved, was when we were at Houseman's, which of course is a bookshop in King's Cross, and Switchboard started in that building, Peace House. So it's quite an amazing place to do an event at. There was a person there from Alaska who lives over in the UK now, who stood up and shared a reflection, which was that Alaska's Switchboard started back in the 70s after hearing about London Gay Switchboard. Yeah. And this person was so grateful to the work that Switchboard, the OG, had done starting in 1974, and thanked us for collecting that work, for sharing this history. I really loved that moment. It felt very special. And then also meeting people who had called Switchboard in the 70s and 80s. Yeah,
there was a lot of people who took the opportunity to just tell their own story, like in the event. Like, you know, you do a book event and you do a Q&A, and usually there's kind of people who are asking you questions about what was your writing process, or like why did you decide to do a chapter on XYZ, whatever. But then I think with this book, it also encouraged people to stand up and actually share their story of lots of things, but one of the common things was calling Switchboard. Probably almost every event, there was at least one person who shared that they had called Switchboard and what it had meant to them. The one in Cardiff, I think, is the one that sticks in my mind, and probably yours. He was an older man who called Switchboard. I don't know whether it was in the 70s or the 80s. 1976. And it was just like a really rough period, and he had been the victim of homophobic violence quite in a sustained way. And so he was just kind of sharing that he called Switchboard to talk about that and to talk about being gay and everything, and back then, and like try to find people. And it was kind of a moment where he stood up and talked about it and kind of kept talking about it. You know, when you're like telling a story and then you like keep talking and then you're like, oh, and then this and then this and then this, and it was kind of like that. And
like
I
an
think,
unlocking.
Yeah, it was an unlocking for him, and I think I'm just really glad that we got to meet him and connect with him through the book, really.
Yeah, and he's actually a volunteer at Switchboard now, which is amazing.
Yeah, then he volunteered.
One that just came to mind, which I'd forgotten about actually, was in Glasgow. We were at Category as Books, and there was a person who was similar age to us who was a teacher.
Oh, yeah.
And they shared their reflections on, we were talking about teachers in Section 28, and they reflected on that and said they recognise now the importance that they have in their work, and it sort of reinvigorated them in this fight that we're still very much living when it comes to queer rights and books and sharing books and all of those really incredibly important things. I'm just trying to think back to lots of the other events that we did all over the shop. We went to Glasgow, Cardiff, like you mentioned.
Sheffield, Folkestone,
Leeds.
Margate, Leeds. Yeah, exactly. Leeds.
Margate was a much more of a like sort of celebratory party vibe, wasn't it?
Because we had it in a pub.
Yeah, we did.
We had it in camp.
Yeah, it was.
Which is so it was organised by the Margate bookshop, but their bookshop isn't super big, so they couldn't have like loads of people in the bookshop. So they hosted the event in camp, which is the queer bar in Margate, and that was good fun. There was a disco ball, and we had Ellen Jones chairing, who was like super well prepared and had loads of questions for us. Ellen's a local writer, and that was a really fun one. Yeah. And although it's interesting because the age range in that one was kind of like more, there was like less of a range basically in that one, in the Margate one. And I wonder if it's because Margate's queer scene, in quotes, is like a bit younger, whereas in other bookshop events we had more of a range, including people into their 60s and 70s. And so it also might be to do with like venues and stuff, like pubs versus bookshops and libraries and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally, which is a really important point around like who feels welcome in different spaces, right? Yeah. I think that like I really enjoyed the tour, and it was such an amazing experience, but I was so tired at the end of it. I don't think I like anticipated quite the emotional impact of doing the tour and what we were doing, which was arriving at these amazing places, super welcoming, meeting loads of lovely people, cute bookshops, doing the right things, and sitting down, and we'd do a reading from the book. And then we would share our reflections on writing the book, which actually, because it's part memoir, involves a lot of our individual stories. And through the work that we've done together over the years, a lot of what we do is share things that have happened to us, but also we kind of prioritize other people's stories as part of it. And this is the first time where we're really saying, well, this is how I felt. This is what happened to me. And I hadn't quite prepared for the impact of sharing those personal moments so much over and again, and listening to other people respond to those. And I hadn't really prepared for it. And so I know that I think both of us were really quite physically and emotionally tired throughout the process of it. Like, it was 100% worth it. And I loved meeting all of those people in those moments. But yeah, I don't think I'd really quite reflected on how it was going to impact me emotionally as well.
It's also quite weird, I have to say, like quite surreal when you're sharing a story that is like very deeply meaningful, and you know the way to tell that story because you've done it a few times, and you know the way that that story can land really well if you tell it in a certain way, because the way that we tell stories is like part of the content of them, you know, like the way that you structure the story and the way that the words that you choose and the sequencing of the story and the pauses that you leave. And I guess when you're kind of like, I don't know, are we professional storytellers or something? But like, if you're a professional storyteller, in quotes, then you kind of develop a way of listening to yourself as you're telling stories and then like tweaking it the next time you tell that story. I mean, somewhat we all do that, but we were doing that in this very intense way. And then you're sharing the story again with the audience. We're sitting alongside each other and we've heard each other do this at the same time. And it's kind of, I want to say very clearly that it's not fake.
Yeah.
It's a performance of a story. It's a delivery of a story where you're basically choosing to tell a story in a certain sequence and with a certain words because you know that's the way that it can reach that audience. And you know that because you've like accumulated the way that you tell that story over telling it several times. But it is also quite surreal to like it's landing with the audience for the first time, but it's landing with us too, like for the 15th time. And it's like that's just quite a weird, I don't know, like I find that really quite like surreal to experience.
It is really interesting, and actually different people respond to those same stories in different ways, and I found that very interesting. And you could kind of shape what you then spoke about next depending on what they picked up on, what they laughed or what they sighed in relation to. And actually, like this weekend we were at Deptford Literature Festivals and running a workshop on LGBTQ plus storytelling, like getting those stories out of your body. We love the idea of living archives, right? We've all got these stories inside of us. And afterwards there was at the Triangle in Deptford, shout out the Triangle, amazing community space, queer community space. We held an open mic and storytelling evening. Well, they did, and we were part of that. And we did a reading from the book. And for the first time, well, Adam had decided not to read what we like normally read, and then we hadn't had time to like communicate it. So we got on stage, and Adam was like, "Oh, you don't know what I'm going to read." And then you read something from the book which you hadn't read up until this point. And it's at the end of the book there are 2 epilogues which are written. There's one written by Adam and there's one written by Tash. They're in our own voices. And I hadn't heard you read from this, and I haven't read it since the last time that I read the draft of the book, right? And it was about, well, maybe you can expand on it in a second about what it was about, but it relates to what you were just speaking about, because I found it so incredibly moving to hear you read that again and hear it for the first time, especially after having, I mean, I feel like I'm welling up. So emotional, especially after having done this tour with you and hear you reflect on things that we've written about in the book, which we've both done, where we've started to change how we feel about something or the time has given us that space. Anyway, it was so amazing. And I think I'd love to do that more maybe when we continue to do these book events, to not just read the same things that we have been reading, but to think about what we feel like reading in that moment. Maybe you could
I think that's right. I think it was partly because of a time constraint, because when we looked at, you know, we had like a 15-minute segment in this open mic night where we were like one of the invited writers, basically. So there were like some invited writers and then there were open mic slots. And so the invited ones, we had 15 minutes and we knew that we wanted to obviously read from the book. You had a poem that you wanted to read as well. So when we were looking at the kind of default plan for the section that I was going to read, I just felt like it might be a bit too long. So then in the break, I kind of got trapped in the toilet talking to someone for a little bit. And then I came out and I was like, okay, hang on, what am I going to read? And I just thought, it would be an opportunity. I don't know. I don't know what made that decision. It just felt like I just wanted to read that bit from my epilogue where it's in my voice. It's the only bit that's in like the first person for me. And it's about my friend George, who passed away. And it's about me inheriting like stories from him, which is what the whole project is about. It's us inheriting stories from other people, from other queer people. And I don't know, I just felt like it was, I wanted to read it. And I think part of that was because it was right, because of the venue and the timings and everything like that. But I also think it was partly driven by the fact that, not that I was like tired of the rest of the book at all, but like because I'm proud of it and it's good, but it's just nice to have your own private reasons, I guess, for keeping things going and keeping things going on. Like I just imagine, like I'm not like a pop star, obviously. Just to announce that now, I'm not a pop. Just in case you were under any doubt, I'm not a pop star. But like, imagine if you've got like a pop song that's like really famous, you know, and you have to, like, the audience expects you like to do it the same every. This
is just
night.
Giving Bob Dylan when he came on stage and he re-sang loads and loads of his songs completely.
Yeah, because you're just like, well, it's my work, and also I need to find the energy in it for me. So coming off the tour, we read, the same pieces quite a few times, and it's all good. It's all important. And you meet the audience where they are, and they're just coming into the book for the first time. But sometimes you just want to do something a little bit different. And so the experience of that made me want to ask you about what, so less about other people's stories for a minute. We've kind of touched on those and the ones that touched us and meeting other people. But I'm interested in our practice as writers, producers, pop stars, whatever we are, that what did the experience of the tour inform you about your practice and maybe what you might want to work on next, and how does the tour feed into your ideas about that?
Yeah, okay, interesting. I was one of the things that happened on tour was a certainty around my gender and my gender identity, and there were a couple of times where people used she, her pronouns for me, and I found that really difficult because I speak about that in the book, and it's a point that we make about Tash going to they, them pronouns, and it made me feel more certain in that decision. So that was a really interesting experience for me because that's a change, and gender for some people is very fluid and changes over time, and I can feel mine doing that in the book, allowing me space to then sort of push into it further. So that's interesting. I'm always thinking about how my gender versus my perceived gender feeds into everything that we do in our work. And then this other thing that happened to me after, you're going to start laughing about this, but after that Cardiff event, I woke up the next day and I heard this clicking in my ear. And I was feeling very full of stories that were being shared with us, and of all of the stories that we've heard over this project, which, I found the logbooks in 2014. We started making the podcast in 2019. It's a long time. And I started hearing this clicking in my ear, and I was very tired. And it was 10 degrees outside, but it felt like -4.
Okay.
And so I became really obsessed with this idea of
what even is that? British weather?
I know.
What is that? With
this really, really weird idea that this clicking in my ear was an iceberg melting, and all of these queer stories were coming out of me. And it started to reflect on the impact of holding all of these stories and what that does to you, and how you can navigate that. So I started to think about the queer stories, and especially those from our elders or different generations, being something that is floating around. We talk about queer history as gossip. Our friend Somaya said that. We talk about listening and the importance and power of listening. But I started to think about these connections and these stories as being something more alive than all of those things. They're kind of out here zipping around. And so I'm thinking a lot about that. And it gets really obtuse and strange now where have you heard about spherics?
No.
So spherics are the sound of lightning that you can pick up on some radio.
Okay.
Radio waves.
Okay.
And
is that the clicking?
Yeah, kind of. It sounds like white noise, but...
No, but what was the clicking in your ear?
Well, this is the thing. It stopped. I wrote a poem about it and then it stopped,
Okay.
which is so interesting. But maybe it's just me melting.
You had an implant? Had Bill Gates implanted a Microsoft chip?
This is not a conspiracy theory podcast.
No.
Just to be clear. But this is what I'm thinking about at the moment.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
There's this idea around spherics are picked up on radio waves and they're sounds of lightning, but they're kind of impossible and hard to hold, just like queer stories. And so I've been thinking a lot about maybe how our queer history and our queer ancestors' stories are held in spherics in a similar way.
Okay. But also an iceberg. There was an iceberg in there?
There's an iceberg with climate change, iceberg melting.
Okay, wow. Okay.
So Adam, you asked me what I'm thinking about at the moment.
This is it.
And this is what you get.
Okay. I need to go and have a lie down. Okay, so we've got icebergs, we've got spherics. Spherics is great.
Yeah.
Spherics sounds like a sort of late noughties indie band.
It does.
The Spherics.
Yeah.
That would be a band name. Okay, that's great though.
I'm going to come back with more on that for sure. What about...
Bring it more back to the Logbooks podcast. We'll do a whole episode on spherics. I actually want to learn about the science of it as well, and lightning.
We can talk about that.
And what happens.
Yeah.
And how do you capture lightning?
Yeah.
Well, that's poetry.
It is. It is,
that's
darling.
what poetry is about.
What was I going to say? Oh, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about and reflect on was that throughout the tour, we've also been holding these queer story spaces, which are places to have these intergenerational conversations and show items from the archive. How have you found hosting those? And I know you did one in Cardiff.
Yeah. Did one in Cardiff with Sarah Hughes. Shout out. And yeah, I think, it's kind of similar to the Q&As in the in the book tour, in the book events, where it's like, but it's a more extended version of that basically, and it's a more de-centered version of that, where the Q&As in book events is obviously centered around like us and our work, whereas those queer story spaces are a way to like remove ourselves from that circle in a way, and like put all the people who turn up to that in the middle of that, and then get them sharing their stories and stuff. So I think it's kind of what we were saying earlier, really. It's just been really nice to hear all these different kinds of stories from different people, and using archive materials. Like we brought in things from different kind of archives from the National Archives, some of the stuff from Switchboard, some of the stuff from the People's Collection Wales, and also stuff from Aunt Nell's previous podcast series, like Black and Gay back in the day. We had a clip from that, and we had a clip from The Quilt as well. So like using these other stimuli to get people to share stories. And I just think, I don't know, they were really, really nice. And I don't know, there's something about that and the book events that, maybe that's why I was asking you the question about what effect like it had on your practice. Was I don't really know the answer for that yet for me, but I definitely was having like an idea for another book, which you know about, I've told you about, and maybe we'll talk about it again on the podcast another day. But it definitely gave it, just hearing all these stories kind of gave me some kind of like energy or food to like be coming up with a new thing. And I also, the other thing about the queer story spaces is just the fact that like everyone says like we don't get an opportunity, like we don't do this enough, like, and it's kind of weird because we had to book a space. I mean, it wasn't hard or anything, but you have to like book a space, advertise it, make sure that you got enough people coming, make sure that there's like teas and coffees for people or whatever, and then facilitate it in a very light way. But really, all it is just people talking to each other about their memories and their stories. So like technologically, like it's nothing. It's just people coming together and talking. And yet everyone said like, there's not enough of this. Like I don't do this enough in my life. And that's just like really kind of makes me a bit, worried for us all in society that we're just not listening to each other enough.
Yeah. And I think it's a radical act, isn't it? That coming together is a radical act. Like it is a point where this doesn't happen together. It's really simple. It's listening. It's being there to just hear each other properly, and how the book really does center the power of listening and how that can really affect change. And we know that stories do make a difference. And I feel like maybe this is a nice little moment for us to come to a close around what we're talking about now, because this is what we want to do with this podcast, isn't it? This is what season 5 is all about. Like, some of the people that we met on the tour are going to be in episodes that are coming up. We've got to record people and the things that they're doing all across the UK. And we want to bring that to you, to your ears, to share those stories, to help create that's queer story space, much like we did in Folkestone and Cardiff in person. But it's hard to get to all of these different places. And you mentioned it there, connectivity is complicated and it feels isolating. So maybe that's something that we can do here at the Logbooks, is help to build that community with you, our listeners.
Definitely. Let's move on. What is the next chapter, Tash, in the Logbooks? That's what we're going to do at the end of every episode. We're just going to like have a little like forward jump. What's the next chapter?
Okay, well, we've got something very exciting. There are these Age of Consent gigs. So in 2024, it was the 20th anniversary of Bronski Beat's amazing album, Age of Consent. It was celebrated with a fantastic show at Queen Elizabeth Hall from people reimagining that brilliant album. And it's coming back and it's going on tour. So the Chateau and the South Bank Centre are presenting the Age of Consent. You've got like Planning to Rock, Tom Rasmussen, Bishy. I think Beth Ditto's also involved. And it's going to be at Brighton Dome on the 2nd of May. Then it's going to Manchester at Viva Studios on the 17th of May. And then coming back to London at the Royal Festival Hall on the 24th of May.
Yeah.
How exciting is that?
I think the idea is to have, there's this classic album from 1984, which was about, gay and lesbian politics at the time. Now we would say queer politics or LGBTQ plus rights, and also just some banging pop tunes as well, including Small Town Boy, most famously. Very, very famous, important, influential song. And then it's about kind of bringing that back, re-performing it with queer artists like from today, and how they reimagine those songs, and also how they draw on the power of those songs from 1984, which is from a long time before these modern day artists were performing, and then getting them to like embody that and like re-perform that, and it'll be all mixed in with like, I think there's going to be audio clips in the shows and everything. There are also some artists that haven't been announced yet, so
exciting.
So yeah, look for that. So if you follow like the Chateau on Instagram, and then the all the dates and everything are being announced there. So yeah, I'm really excited for those.
And if you want a taste of what that sounds like, listen to Planning to Rock's rework of Bronski Beat's Small Town Boy, because it's amazing.
Yes. And also, in the meantime, you can definitely subscribe to Aunt Nell's Patreon, because now that we're relaunching the Logbooks podcast, we've also launched a Patreon where we're going to have bonus episodes and behind the scenes stuff and like newsletters and blog posts and stuff that we're putting out to help support this work. So thank you for supporting that. You can also go back to the beginning of the logbooks, Tash.
Oh my God, always.
You could go all the way back to 2019 and listen all the way back through the logbooks. If you are just coming to this because you've heard of Tash and me because of the book or something, then you could go all the way back to the beginning of the logbooks podcast and like listen to all the old Switchboard history and the queer history going back to 74. So.
Yeah, totally. And do get in touch with us at Aunt Nell _ on Instagram, or at our personal Instagrams, which you can find from there. Tell us what your story is. Tell us what you think about the logbooks. Tell us what you want to hear.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Okay, let's wrap up. That was our first episode of the new
That was good.
The new life of the logbooks. The Logbooks is an Aunt Nell production.
It is hosted and produced by Tash Walker and Adam Zmith.
The assistant producer is Mia Campbell. Music from Soundstripe.
Original artwork by Natalie Doto.
With thanks to the dreamboats at Acast.
Finding ways to be financially savvy is a smart move. And knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want, like that dream home or new ride, is a great feeling. That's why the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you save when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.